Toulouse should now be called two wins. Prince Andrew is paying for his past sins. After Saturday, Wigan fans are in heaven. The Bradford Bulls partied like it was 1997. There were also wins for Saints, Wakey and Leeds. Brisbane now know to give a little respect to Super League. Welcome to the 10th episode of Super League 360, a podcast primarily about the top tier of British Rugby League, but a few other things as well. My name is Lee Addison.
And my name is John Davidson.
You've not said anything about my poetry this week, John. Was it not up to the mark?
It was very good, mate. It was very good, but you're setting high standards, so
you're just used to it now. You're blasé already. I mean, when somebody, when you've got a star player in your team, you just expect greatness all the time.
Exactly.
I'm a coach in Australia, but obviously clearly not got an Australian accent despite nearly 20 years in this country. John's a journalist in the UK. We have had to cut down on describing who we are, so you have to look back at some old podcasts or on the description. This podcast is being aired also on the Ashes Rugby League and Rugby League Coach podcast platforms, Rugby League Coach YouTube as well, so if you subscribe to those, you won't miss a thing. And I also believe in the last week, John, that rugbyleague.com, Steve Mascord and the gang have taken our podcast as well, which we really appreciate.
Yeah, to put us on their schedule of programming.
John Davidson, tweet of the week. It's not something that you did per se, it's the responses to it. So on the February the 18th, you tweeted. Do you still tweet, even though it's called X? You still X'd?
I like to call it Twitter as opposed to X. I'm in denial about the must takeover.
To support Hull KR, Specsavers is giving out 20,000 red-tinted glasses at the MKM Stadium entrances tomorrow night for the World Club Challenge. Through the lenses, anything black turns red, giving KR fans a way to feel at home in a stadium usually wrapped in black and white. And then at Keith_Cater, who is known on X Twitter as a dad of three, granddad of six, and Hull FC mad, replied, "Effing gobbledygook, you muppet, call yourself a journo, thought you was all supposed to be good with words, with it being your trade, effinglame.com.
Yep. Perfectly normal response in the world of social media and in rugby league, yeah.
Somebody else said they went there, spelt it wrong, on a holiday. Tell me the Broncos put as much into this as they did their finals campaign. No, didn't even have a lead-up match. Yeah, they took it serious, and I'm Prince Andrew. Socials pop at Lee of the week. They're still happening. In response to my saying that I believe that we should respect Super League because there's only two professional full-time competitions in the world, so we should show it a bit more respect. Ryan Fuller on Facebook said, "Y'all can't even pronounce bottle of water correctly. Relax. Julian Thomas Brenchley, Super League is the NRL from Timu. Shut up." In response to my saying Wigan's 1994 World Club Challenge win was the best, well, a certain man called Martin Afire shared my post. But Lee Cullerton replied, "Bollocks! Widnes versus Canberra Raiders. The all-concerning BTW. Widnes 89 all day long." We got some questions, though, on social media. John Paul Tress said, "Do you think Willie Peters will still be at KR next year?"
He's contracted, but to be honest, I would not be surprised. Look, I think the Newcastle Knights were interested in him last year. He wasn't interested in that job. I think there was another gig potentially that he could have gone for in the NRL that he didn't. I'm sure if Anthony Seibold gets the axe, or if Manly struggle, he'll be on the radar for Manly. I think he's probably the number one candidate for any NRL job at the moment. So it's probably 50-50 if he's there next year. I know the PNG Chiefs, there was a story came out from Australia saying he'd be interested in talking about a job. I don't think necessarily PNG would be the first choice for him, but I think he's a front runner. What he did last year, but then obviously what he's done with Holcar on Thursday night. With the Ashes as well with Australia, he's very, very talented coach and got a glowing reputation that just gets better and better.
And of course, he's being linked with the England job too. Look, there's just one thing I want to add. It's happened this week. Jason Demetriou also spoke about wanting to get back into the NRL. He's only just got his feet under the table at London. I think Willie Peters has possibly earned the right, but I just find it a tiny little bit disrespectful to these clubs in England. And Brad Arthur has been linked to a few positions ever since he's been at Leeds. It's just a tiny bit disrespectful to the clubs in England, their employers.
Yeah.
I know the journalists will ask. It doesn't mean they have to answer.
Yeah, I mean, I think it probably depends on the relationship that you have with the club and also your intentions when you come in. I think Brad Arthur always came in from day dot saying he was never going to be at Leeds for a long time. He publicly went for the Perth job, didn't get it. He's always said that he's looking to get back to the NRL. I don't think he's made any secrets of that. Willie Peters, I'm trying to remember, but I think he got to Holcar in end of 2022, 23. So this is his fourth season now. And look, he's turned the club around. I'm sure there have been discussions with the hierarchy long term. He's always said that he wanted to get into the NRL. I think his contract is to the end of 2028. I could be wrong there. He had an extension not that long ago. But look, he may see that out. I think his family's very happy. His wife's happy there. And literally he's doing a great job there. So, but, you can say, Lee, that it's just disrespectful. But the NRL is the pinnacle of the sport. Like, that's a fact. Whether KL won on Thursday night or not, which they did, it's still the pinnacle of the sport.
Sam Luke on Facebook said, World Club Challenge, why would Rovers go short from a dropout when Rovers are well up on points?
Well, you're the coach, mate. I'll leave that one to you.
I think sometimes players are just robots and don't always adapt to the situation, particularly when under pressure. And we're going to talk a bit later about the context of the World Club Challenge in England, and it would have meant so much to those Hull KR players, particularly the English lads, to win the game. And the Australian lads who, again, probably can't necessarily secure an NRL contract, so they're playing in Super League. It would be big for them too, because they want to stamp their mark on on the world of rugby league. So I think pressure sometimes does strange things to people, and I do think that a good leader in that team and a smart... So I would imagine if Cameron Smith at his peak was playing for Hull KR or Cooper Cronk, they would have said, no, we need to kick this one long. So I just think it's that simple, really. Maybe Willie sent the message out. Maybe Willie didn't send the message out. Maybe Willie tried to send the message out, but the trainer didn't get there. I just think sometimes we do things in rugby league just because they get done, and we don't necessarily process the reasons why. Interesting question. Matthew Durnley, who has sent us a few questions. Thanks, Matthew. Given that all three promoted teams have won a game and Toulouse being 2 from 2, does it prove that there is enough talent for 14 teams in Super League and that it just needs celebrating more?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. I don't think we can make the judgment now. When you say, is there enough talent? I mean, there's not enough English talent, because if you look across all those teams, most of them have at least 10 foreign players. So they had to increase the quota because they were concerned about the lack of talent. So I think that's a fact. I mean, I even, we started on the World Cup Challenge. I had a look at the makeup of the two squads. And if you look through, 35% of Hull KR's team on Thursday night, of their 17, 35% were Aussies, 6 of them. And they had a Kiwi player and a French player, and 9 of them, 53%, were English. And then you look at the Broncos, 70% of their players were Aussies and 5 of them were Kiwi, so 30%. Yeah. So out of the 2 squads, 53% of the players on the field in the World Club Challenge were Australian and 26% were English.
So what was the percentage of Australian, sorry?
53% out of the 34 players. And both of the coaches were Australian. And there was actually 18% were Kiwis and 26% were English.
So it's probably more a reflection of the Southern Hemisphere player pool. And
I think you can read lots into it, but I think it shows how interreliant both the NRL and Super League are. Like the English game is very reliant on Australian and New Zealand players, coaches throughout. And, there's a massive... I think it's another reason why there should be a partnership between the 2 leagues, because there's already... things going on, knowledge sharing, loans, players moving, development, all that sort of stuff. It already happens anyway. Media, it needs probably to be formalised. But I think we're very dependent on each side of the world because rugby league is a small sport. Let's be honest. They're very co-reliant.
So, as you said, I'm a coach, and I look at it from a coaching perspective. And one thing I've noticed has been a few big injuries in the first round of Super League. Blake Taff. Somebody else at Wigan is out for a while. I forget off the top. Jack Wardle.
Huddersfield have got a load of injuries.
A load. Whereas I'm critical of the NRL, I think they train too much and prepare too much for the season. And I think there's too much of a focus on trying to get personal bests all the time. By round 2, there'll be 34 players on the sideline. Easily. That's 2 squads of 17. Okay? In Super League, I think it's the exact opposite. I think they don't have enough time. Their season finishes later, and it also starts earlier. And this year, we've also had the added focus on the Ashes. So they've had less preparation time. So I think there's a lot of bodies that are underprepared. And because of that, I think some of the stronger sides and those who are more in tune with sports science and the body's workings actually tend to pace their season a little bit more. So they're not necessarily focused on starting too well all the time. And Leeds might be an example of that, right? They had a scratchy performance the week before. Lee could be one of those. They're probably just 80-70% of where they want to be. St Helens could be, etc., etc. Wigan have had a good start, but I don't think they've had the toughest draw yet. And what that gives an opportunity for is for the newly promoted sides. So, for example, your Bradfords, your Yorks, and your Toulouse, by natural attrition, they'll have less international players anyway. So they'll have more of their players at pre-season, so they can put in more work, and as a result, they can start the season well. And I think that's why York pulled the pants down of St Helens. St Helens were 10% off. I think that's why Toulouse have had a good start as well, because they're just catching teams a little bit cold. And because it's a bloody long year, John, the Super League year.
It is, yeah.
And the human body just can't take that much work throughout a year. So what I think we're finding right now, Matthew, is that imbalance, that some teams are a bit more ahead in their preparation, because if York, Bradford, Toulouse get 5 wins from the first 10 games, they're not going to finish bottom, basically. And that's why a team like Huddersfield will probably start to get a little bit worried in a couple of weeks if they don't win a game. And Castleford, what we're actually looking at is a situation where we probably need to judge it in 8 to 10 rounds. In 8 to 10 rounds, and I think there's warning signs there already with York. York played the game of their life against St Helens 7 days later.
KR.
Against Hull KR. Yeah. A week later, went to Leeds. And don't get me wrong, I know they've had a hard draw, but that just proves how hard elite rugby league can be.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, no, I think we'll have a better judge probably around Easter, which is, 6, 7, 8 rounds in. And we'll have a better judge in the year. But look, the promoted teams so far have done really well. Like Bradford were very good against Catalans. You know, I mean, it's the first game in Odsal, Super League game in Odsal in 11, 12 years, and they had 10,000 people there, which was fantastic. And they deserved their win, and Toulouse, great 2 wins. You know, you'd have to say against Wakefield and Cass, winnable probably games for Toulouse, but not necessarily, you know, no gimmies by anyway, but they've done fantastically well. And York, you know, came up against a very talented lead side. So, yeah, we will know more throughout the year. I think if you Castleford or Huddersfield, though, yeah, you're 2 wins and 2 losses. So their game coming up in round 3 is massive. You don't want to be none and 3 after 3 rounds.
If you want to get questions to us during the week, well, first of all, you can write on my Facebook or Instagram at Rugby League Coach, or you can email me admin@rugbyleaguecoach.com.au. John?
You can get me on Facebook at John Davidson Journalist, or on X and Johnny D Davidson. That's generally where most of the abuse rolls in.
I think you'd give different contact details every week.
Yeah, Lee Addison at hotmail.com is what I usually...
Look, we talked about the World Club Challenge. We had a reaction pod, and I know we're going to go into it in game reviews, and we're also going to have it in Johnny's Jab, so we'll just park that for a moment. We have also made a pledge to cover some NRL news a little bit, to make sure fans in England in particular are still in tune with what's going on. So obviously they're 2 weeks from the season, starting on the mainland, but obviously Vegas is the official start of their season. This one, I know you're going to respond to, though. I'm not one of those who will overanalyze trials, so friendly matches, in terms of their importance for the bigger picture, for the reasons I've just mentioned with regards to Super League, that some teams are more prepared than others at this stage of the year. For example, I'm pretty sure we're not too worried about Melbourne Storm, even though the Titans put 40 past them in a trial. That said, a certain team that John Davidson supported as a boy, the Manly Sea Eagles, they played against South Sydney Rabbitohs yesterday in a trial, and they showed absolutely nothing. And Souths basically controlled the game from go to O. And the coach, Seabold, was seen several times in the coaching box. He wasn't losing his rag by any stretch. He's not that kind of person, but he was just shaking his head. No. And that would suggest to me that he wasn't seeing what he wanted to see at this stage. He wasn't too relaxed about what he was seeing. So that came to mind automatically when you mentioned Willie Peters, who has worked at Manly before. That could be another real thing to watch, because I think Seabold is a bit in the Sam Burgess realm. Needs to have at a big club that needs to have a good start to the NRL season.
Oh yeah. He's probably one of the coaches under the most pressure. I'd probably put him, Todd Payton. I mean, apart from that, I think probably even Shane Flanagan's got a bit more breathing space. But I think those two are probably the most under pressure. Obviously, Holbrook's a new coach. The Titans coach, whose name escapes me, he's only just come in, so he's got a bit of breathing room. Jason Riles is only in his 2nd season at Paris. So, yeah, I think Seabold wasn't far from the axe last season, and, you know, Manly had a bad year last year, and they really, obviously the DCE's gone, but they need to improve, and I think if they don't perform well, he will be out.
Mike Rush is leaving St. Helens, or has left. You can maybe add some clarity to that, but that's St. Helens and the Rugby Football League that are looking for a chief executive officer.
Yeah, the Rush one is very interesting. Obviously, been at the club for 27 years. You know, he was the coach at one point. He was the CEO for a long time. Was sort of the key figure at the club for a long time. But there'd been a lot of rumours about him. I approached him the week before. He denied he'd left his role. The media manager denied it. And then there was more rumours that it was an announcement on the Monday. And then, lo and behold, on the Monday, they announced that he was stepping down. Just goes to show you can always believe what you're told. But look, yeah, I think there's a lot that's been gone behind the scenes. With Mike Rush, obviously, there's the Mark Percival situation, which, sources have sort of said that he was offered a contract which he agreed to, and then that contract was pulled, and that's upset a lot of people. You could say there's been a lot of questionable decisions in terms of re-signings and deals and recruitment at St Helens in the last couple of years, like the signing of Wonga Blake and extensions for Ignatius Parsi and Conrad Hurrell. There's quite a few there. So, look, saying all that, I think Mike Rush obviously was a key part in their 4 wins in a row. But maybe, just change is perhaps good at any club. But the chairman, Eamon McManus, is filling in that role, so that's probably not a great thing. Then you've got a chairman running the club as the CEO as well, long term. But yeah, I think St Helens, to me, they've been a very successful club, but they're somewhat insular. They're very focused about themselves and their town, and not looking like, say, a Wigan is to kind of promote the sport and everything around. So maybe some change at that club will open their doors a bit, and they'll look beyond the greater Merseyside area.
I know Mike Rush and I've worked with him. What an amazing stint at St Helens, 27 years. I mean, nobody can doubt commitment to a club. But what I will add, and this is with the biggest amount of respect I could ever offer, as I mentioned sometimes, I'm a Manchester City fan, and when City won the treble, which was their holy grail for so long, and winning the Champions League, there's definitely been something of a drop in standard at Manchester City. And this is with all those resources, all the support, all the finances, and nothing fails like success in sport. And I think if you look at Mike Rush's era as CEO, St Helens actually won the Super League. Was it 4 on the bounce or 3 on the bounce?
That was 4 on the bounce.
4 on the bounce, which is an amazing achievement.
20, 21, 22, yeah.
Nobody else has done that. Nobody else has done that. So it may just be that he's reached the end of his energy level. And that's not a crime. And he needs to be applauded for what he's done there. And because there's a few things. Another thing to add to the St Helens probably need a reset is that crowd on Thursday or Friday, whenever they played. Lee are only down the road from St Helens. It was a big game, and there were so many empty seats there. Now, it wasn't a good look. So,
I think there was. I'm just actually having a look now. I think it was 50. It was 13,203, which is not the biggest crowd. But look, I think if you look at St Helens crowds, even when they were in that great run, they weren't getting massive crowds every week. And I think what happened with Paul Wellens last year was also, I think the treatment of a club legend like him and the treatment by some of the fans as well, like, abuse being sent to his son and all that sort of thing. It's just disgusting.
A club that's possibly lost its way a little bit.
Yes, I think that's fair. Look, I think that's a fair comment. And I'm not putting that blame solely on Mike Rush or anything like that. But I think obviously things are changing there. Paul Rowley's come in. I actually saw Paul a couple of hours ago. He was commentating on the Huddersfield game. There's been a big turnover of players. There's going to be more turnover. That generation for that run, is largely going or gone. And it needs to happen. They've got a good crop of young players coming through, but there needs to be change in that club, and I think they do need to modernise a bit as well.
Talking of modernising, Bradford Bulls return to Super League, and therefore Odsal returns to Super League. I'll be quite honest, John, just from looking on the television all the way from Brisbane, it looks no different to when I was last there sometime in the late 90s.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're a bit harsh there. I think the last time I was at Odsal was 2018, but I think they have made quite a few changes, floodlights. They've painted certain things. So I think we give them some credit. Obviously, it's not It's not an Allianz Arena. It's not a Wembley. It's, but look, 10,000 people there for the first game against Catalans, and Catalans will have no away fans, which is not a criticism of Catalans. It's just a fact. So fantastic to see that many people in Bradford at the Bulls. Hopefully they can maintain similar crowd levels throughout the season. They'll be able to, but they were really good. It was a night of celebration for them. They've had a lot of dark times, Bradford, since, well, I think it's probably around 2009, 2010 when, the main problem started. So good on them. Great performance. They dominated Catalans. Catalans were, as their coach said, they were soft.
We'll go through that in the game review. Talking about dark times, these new floodlights, I think they still need to turn them up a bit because it did look dark on the TV, and the grass was long too. The grass was really long.
Look, I said this to Kurt Haggerty at the Super League launch. Like, coming odds will be an advantage for his team because
definitely,
it is a different climate in that bowl, and it's a small pitch, and it's not the most hospitable. It's a bit like a couple of years ago, I think John Wilkins just said, hated playing at Wakefield because the dressing rooms were from,
Salford.
Sporting life.
Salford, my hometown, used to bang your head on the dressing room.
I mean, not at the AJ Bell, but definitely at the Willows.
There's a problem though. We are now in 2026, which is over a quarter of a century into the 21st century. So people expect more. Our friend James Speedy Varley put on Facebook, there's better floodlights. Geez, I hate to see what they were like previously. And the Speedway track has been tarmased instead of shale. I don't know what tarmac means. He said he didn't get caught short, so not sure about the toilets yet. The place does have a retro feel, shall we put it that way. And he's a Bradford fan. He's the fair Bradford fan. Chad Collinson said it's worse now than it was in 97. Sam Grundy said corporate hospitality stand built where the Speedway pitch used to be. I think they've been there for a while, though, haven't they?
Yeah, I think they've done some work on the corporate hospitality. Look, I'm giving Bradford credit. You can't magic up millions to fix a stadium.
No.
That whole stadium needs a lot of work, but they're trying to fix it. They're trying to improve it. So. And, they had a band there for the first night and they put on a great show. So credit to the Bulls.
Something's cooking at Wigan. They'll be top of the ladder, I would assume, right now. But Adam Kieran, who plays in the outside backs, keeps clocking everybody. He's been simming the first 2 weeks of Super League.
He picked up, I know at least he picked up one last year, if not more. He has got a bit of a worrying tendency to kind of fly out of the line. I mean, he's trying to make a defensive read and to stop the ball getting out to the winger, but he's coming in and he's hitting people in the head, whether it be shoulder to head or swinging arm. And it was a bad one. I think he was probably lucky he didn't get a red on Saturday night against Hull FC, but he's by no means a dirty player, but he's just got a tendency to get those wrong. And I would imagine, with the points loading, I don't know what points he's on, but he's looking at least probably a week or two ban, which with Jake Wall, that means that Wigan have no centres. So it's going to be difficult for them in the next game.
You've mentioned he didn't get a red, so it's a good segue into something I want to talk about, refereeing interpretations. I actually feel like the Super League at the moment is going through a phase where they are letting things go. And when I watched the World Club Challenge the other day, it was pretty obvious that Brisbane was sometimes trying to play a different sport. So, for example, obstructions, tries that would be reviewed incessantly in the NRL were not reviewed in that World Club Challenge, or indeed in most Super League games. I've seen a few things that look a bit forward. The marker area, I'm sorry, is an absolute disgrace. I implore everybody to let me finish, John, because I can see you getting ready. I can see that. I suggest everybody looks at the first set of Super League last year, the grand final, and how offside. What is it? Farrell. What's his name? The right edge for Wigan.
Farrell.
Who?
Liam
Farrell. That's right. Yeah, Liam. There's too many Farrells in Wigan. he was so offside when he chopped down Mikey Lewis's kick. It was ridiculous. But, and this is why I stopped you interrupting me, I actually like all this. I think it's a positive because the game's flowing. And I'm worried the NRL will be the exact opposite. So during the World Club Challenge, a couple of Brisbane players were in the tackle. They were grabbing the back of the neck to try and suggest that they'd been grappled. Some of them were trying to get some kind of crusher. Somebody dived like it was Swan Lake when a defender just brushed them. And none of it was even looked at by the referee, I can assume. And yeah, I like it. I've got to be honest.
I was at the game, and the press seats at Hull FC are about they're as far back as like Lincoln, so you can't really see a lot what's going on.
What's worse, the MKM or Everton Stadium?
Probably the MKM actually, because at least you're up. You're not necessarily back. But anyway, look, I can't comment. I have not gone back and watched the game and analysed the ruck, but there was a few forward passes there in that game, and I've seen a lot of forward passes the first two rounds, and they don't seem to be getting called. And again, in terms of the ruck, I mean, that Wigan game, that Wigan Hull FC game, there seemed to be a lot of holding and a lot of niggle around the neck and head. It was just getting not penalised. So yeah, it's a bit of a crapshoot. I think week to week, what is and what isn't getting penalised. Some refs seem to be wanting quicker rucks, others don't. It kind of ebbs and flows.
I think what would happen in Australia because of the scrutiny around your 360s and your radio shows, they'd just be banging on about one decision or two. And we're just not getting that at the moment in England. And coaches will get a bit frustrated. I understand that. But as a rule, I think praise to the referees for allowing things to flow. And there's not that paralysis by analysis that we have in the NRL where, because I do think one thing we can praise the Super League refs for at the moment, they've got a feel for the game. So none of the games have erupted. None of the games have turned into the OK Corral yet. I do know under Liam Moore there will tend to be one ruck or two that I remember in the Super League Grand Final. I looked at one ruck in the middle of the game and I'm thinking, I don't even know how to describe what I've just seen. It was that different to what normally happens. So, but I'm talking about rare incidences. So play on, I say. Play on for a while, anyway. You wrote a story last week, Sean Wayne considering or started legal action over his exit from England. I thought he resigned, John. I thought he resigned.
Well, that was the claim in the press release that the RFL made on the 14th of January. I found out that he'd threatened legal action. He did not see the decision for him to move on by the RFL coming, and that he threatened legal action. And I chased the RFL for quite some time in this, and in the end they refused to comment. So they wouldn't confirm it, and they wouldn't deny it, and they wouldn't provide any other context. And neither did the RFL CEO. Sean Wayne didn't get back to me either. But yeah, it's not surprising in the sense that I think he always had ultimate faith in his own ability, and he was asked after the third test, do you believe you are the right man still for the job? And he said, I don't believe, I know I am, and I have the support of my staff and players. Now, there have been some rumblings that, I think some of the players weren't that happy, but I think most people can work out when you lose an Ashes series 3-0 and you get the selections wrong, you get the tactics wrong, you get the performances wrong, it's probably time to move on. So I think the RFL made the right decision without a doubt.
There's also tends to be 10 of the starting 13 that are very happy with the coach because they got picked.
Well, look, just to jump in there, and it goes back to the World Cup Challenge. The heroic performance that Dean Hadley put in. He was one of the players that got overlooked by Sean Wayne. Elliot Mangella was another player.
The man of steel.
Jez Letton obviously played the second and third tests started at hooker for England, but should have started the first test and was maybe England's best player of the series. He was absolutely phenomenal. on Thursday night, and then you've got Mikey Lewis, who probably should have started at in the halves for all three, not off the bench or at hooker or at fullback. So I think what happened on Thursday night probably rammed home for some people a little more opinions about the Ashes as well.
Also on the RFL, it was leaked last week from Australia, actually, that Tony Mestroff, the former Manly CEO, could be the next English Rugby League CEO.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's applied it. It's interesting they said he was the front runner. I mean, I've not heard that. That may be the case, but I've not heard that. As I said, there's been a few names mentioned, in contention, like Kyle Fitzpatrick and Paul Lakin. Rob Hicks's name's been thrown up. I think Mestroff would be interesting because obviously he's got close ties to Peter V'landys, doesn't he? Mm-hmm. So I think if he got the job, you would think that some sort of partnership with the NRL would be, part of that or on the way. But Nigel Wood and the RFL's kind of, I'm not sure how the best way to put it, but not necessarily welcomed any NRL takeover or any partnership with Open Arms, have they? They've, I think there's a reluctance from some people in the English game to get into bed with the NRL. So, yeah, I think there's a lot to come on that front. And then obviously who is the chairman who sits above the new RFL CEO, the group chairman, which some people are saying it'll be a coronation for Nigel Wood. So I guess I think March is probably when we will find out, or at least at the end of March, the successes of those or the appointments for those positions.
Whether people love or hate what the Nigel Wood administration is doing right now, I know it's not officially the Nigel Wood administration, but I think we can safely assume he's got a lot of influence. This new broom, love them or hate them for what they're doing, they are doing things. And this CEO appointment will, I think, give us the biggest indication of their plan for the next phase of Super Leagues and Rugby Football League's history. I really do. Because if they do go with an Australian, such as Mestroff or any CEO in Australia at all who fancies it, that is going to be a pretty good indication, but also, at the very least, somebody that Peter V'landys and Andrew Abdo can liaise with about what's going on. I mean, there's no guarantee that the NRL are happy with what they are looking at too. They might want to monitor it for a year, 18 months, 2 years.
Yeah.
If the appointment is somebody that some people on internet forums will say, oh, that's one of Nigel Wood's old boys from somewhere, blah, blah, blah. We have a pretty clear idea of what might be happening. If they go for a complete outsider from anywhere else apart from Rugby League World in Australia, then that's another direction again. So I think this is going to be a real key appointment. English Rugby League sides are very good at the World Club Challenge, John. And Hull KR beat Broncos 30-24. I mean, we did a reaction podcast on Thursday night, your time, Friday morning, Australia time. And the idea of that is we want fans who are at away games, like literally we'll have it out on the first game of the weekend, most weekends, so you can listen to it on the way home. And we'll literally want the quick reaction. I guess my question to you, John, is what are your thoughts after you've had a few nights' sleep? Because we bear in mind we have done our review of the game.
Yeah.
So you live in England, you work in England. How does it sit in your head since Thursday?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I went back and watched some of the post match. I've not rewatched the game, but and I was writing a piece for the Guardian about Payne Haas and how the Broncos have dealt with his decision to defect to South Sydney. So that was, I guess, a separate angle. But look, the reaction, it was a fantastic occasion. I've been to quite a few World Cup challenges and I've been to a lot of Super League Grand Finals, World Cup Finals, Challenge Cup Finals, the biggest games in rugby league for the best part of a decade. That was right up there. It was fantastic. Full house, unbelievable atmosphere. Whole KR did a great job putting the event, and the game was amazing. Whole KR flying out of the box, absolutely bashing the Broncos, and then the Broncos coming back in the last 20 minutes or so and almost stealing it. It was squeaky bum time for everyone at the whole game. And I left that game thinking, wow, that was amazing, and how lucky I am to be able to get paid to write about the sport. So it renewed my faith. Look, I've said this for numerous years, and the Wigan-Penrith game, 2 years ago, was also fantastic. The St Helens-Penrith game, which obviously I watched on TV because it was out in Western Sydney, that was a great game. I think these are great occasions. I think they should be in the calendar every year. The next one should be in Australia, regardless of who wins it. It should be a fixture in the calendar, and it means a lot. And the people that claim, it doesn't mean anything, I think they're just kidding themselves.
Well, this is Johnny's jab. We've merged it into Johnny's jab. I think you're right.
I think, look, the Broncos came in 10 days before. They were staying in, I think is it the Lensbury? It's apparently like the elite world-class hotel in London that the All Blacks and everyone stays in. It costs an arm and a leg. They had opposed sessions with the London Broncos. They had opposed sessions with Hull FC. They flew up from London to Hull, which is, I don't know, a 4-hour drive. They were sparing no expense. Like, yes, they could have had a game beforehand, but
the RLPA probably wouldn't allow that anyway.
Exactly. That's the thing that people seem to forget. You can't just throw in extra games when you have a players' union that has limits on how much players can play. And also, where the NRL sits, the season hasn't started yet. People are still in pre-season. So, look, the Broncos wanted to win, and they gave it their all. They might have been a bit rusty stuff, but the whole KR deserve the credit because they were near perfect for 50, 60 minutes. And you can't... The Broncos did this all in the final series last year, didn't they? They play a very loose open style, which is entertaining to watch, but they let in a lot of tries, and they came back in every semi and even in the grand final to win. But you can't keep doing that in every game.
They played like a team that hadn't played a game. So every try that Hull KR scored, 4 of them... So every try that Hull KR scored, their set started within 20 metres of the Broncos' goal line. Right? So 4 errors. So I call them field position gifts. 4 errors, and the 5th one was a 40-20. Okay, so...
Lee, I can't remember when centre fullback winger dropped so much ball from kicks on their own line. Like, it was terrible. Like,
they were rusty. They were rusty, and then they sort of woke up and clicked a little bit. Look, I can only assume they don't do it in Las Vegas because the Super League makes more money if they play it in, or the clubs make more money if they play it in England. That's the only reason I can assume. Because I can assume because the sensible decision for integrity of the game, so that we don't have to have this conversation about who takes it the most seriously and whatever else, would be to play it in that slot in Las Vegas. That would be the obvious one.
It's not easy to organise, though, is it? Because in terms of Vegas, clubs are told 9 months or whatever out. There's a lot of preparations going, marketing. Like, it's not, you can't just add in a game in Vegas, and like, it's not like there's Featherstone down the road where there's a stadium that you can use. Like, it's American sport. It's a different.
But the NRL and the RFL could book that for them and just say, look, you just have to do it. But they could consult and
look. They just need to.
Where there's a will, John.
Yeah, well, this is a contest. This is an event that's got real value.
Absolutely.
So they just need to find a space in it in the calendar every year. I think it works in February. Maybe as an opener for the season for both competitions. The problem is Super League starts so much earlier, so it's round 2. It's usually round 2 or round 3 in Super League. But the World Cup Challenge is great, and the players love it. All the players are up. Fans get behind it.
Yeah, I think it's a great challenge for NRL teams at the moment. I mean, the last 5 years have been Super Leagues, and I think the way you describe what Broncos did is them starting to go, hang on a minute, we're not guaranteed a win. Because I think there has been a little bit of that. I think I look back over the history of it, some of the approaches have been somewhat comme ça, as they say in France. I think Penrith first time round were probably a little bit blasé when they were at home. They certainly weren't in their second visit to Wigan. So I just think it's a real tough challenge for NRL teams. And I think we forget sometimes in Australia, yes, winning the NRL is a great competition, is a great achievement, but great teams always go a step further than that. Because we're in a salary cap sport, if you look at the last 25 years, virtually every team's been in the NRL grand final, right? So the talent gets shared around, basically. So I just think it's a great challenge again for the NRL teams to try and do something as it is right now in England as well. So I'm with you, John. I'm with you.
Well, you look at it's interesting because between I think it was 2012 Leeds beat Manly at Headingley, and then from basically 2013 till 2023, there was 2 years off with COVID, but 2023. Super League only won one of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 World Cup challenges, and that was Wigan beating Cronulla at the DW, which I was at 2017. But there was some massive scores in there, like Souths. Well, the Roosters beat Wigan 36-14 in Sydney. Souths smashed St Helens 39-0 in Intrepid Park. North Queensland, I was at this game, and it was a great game, even though North Queensland battered Leeds 38-4. And then, Melbourne beat Leeds 38-4 in Melbourne in 2018. And then, there was 2 Roosters wins, which were closer games, 20-8 and 20-12. But I think it just shows that probably the top end, people would say, all of Super League's improving. I wouldn't necessarily say that, but I would say the top end of Super League, I'd say your top 4 can definitely compete. And they're one-off games. Anything can happen in a one-off game. But I think you look at HKR, Wigan, Lee, they could compete with the NRL sides. And I think that's probably always been the case. But yeah, I'm a big fan of the World Cup Challenge, and I think long may it continue.
St Helens 20, Lee 18. Paul Rowley gets his first Super League 1 win. Lee led twice in that game. I want to talk about St Helens' defence, their edge defence in particularly the right edge. Already, John, they're the 4th worst defensive side in the competition. Only Cass, York and Hull FC are worse. And I want, the reason I'm bringing this up is because last week I said I do have worries about Paul Rowley's defensive systems. Just, I'm not targeting Paul Rowley. It's just something I've noticed in the past, and I want fans to look out for it because they've conceded some points already, and it's changes afoot at St Helens, John.
Well, I saw him today. I should have passed on your comment about his defensive systems.
Thank you.
No, I was watching the Bradford game, so I only switched over and saw the ending, which was quite thrilling because St Helens were bravely holding on and Lee were coming right back at them. But yeah, Lee are a very good team. I think that St Helens were relieved to get that win and get off the mark. But the issue is more injuries. So I think Nane McDonald and Johnny Lomax picked up injuries in that game. Obviously, they've already lost Wells and Lees for a long period. So big problems on the injury front for St Helens. That they're getting that win at home is a big pressure reliever. But there's more. They go to Catalans next weekend, which isn't always an easy away trip. Even though Catalans were very poor against Bradford. But yeah, that'll be a tough one for them.
Bradford's not an easy away trip if you come from Catalan region.
No. No, that's true.
Jackson Hastings probably did a bit more of the things that we know and love about him in Super League. He had a better game. I actually got a bit of a, you just have the occasional favourite player that you like. I'm a big fan of Kyle Felt. I always feel like he's been an undervalued wing who's just ploughed his trade up there at Cowboy, seems to score at least 2 every other week, and he got on the score sheet. So that was good. That was good to see him doing exactly the same thing in St Helens' Industrial North. Leeds 46, York 14. York back to earth with a bump.
Yeah, I saw the highlights for this. It looked like the York were competitive early on, and then just Leeds.
First half hour they were in it.
Yeah, they just moved the ball really well, and obviously Mike Acevo is just a massive man. I mean, I think his best at Para was probably 4 years ago, or 5 years ago, but he's still a huge human, and it's going to take more one-on-one. You get him one-on-one on the edge, he's going to score probably 99 times out of 100. And I think he took Ben Jones-Bishop on his back on one of them, and he got 2 tries. But yeah, Leeds needed a win, a good performance. I'll be very happy with that. And York, a little bit down to earth, but I think that's going to happen over a season. Leeds are a good team, and it's going to be
8 tries, Leeds.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be hard for York to maintain that level that they had against Hull every week because, they were in the championship last year. It's just...
And then this retro theme, it was the first time they'd met since 1995. On York, one of the worries I have, so I did an analysis video on some defensive issues for some Super League teams last week. The ones I didn't cover that I'm going to do this week. And one thing I said about York is that Hull KR managed to, whenever they got near the goal line, just managed to overpower them. So my theory last week, they were a bit soft in the middle defensively. Having a look at them this week, I have another theory as well to go alongside that one. They sometimes get the positioning wrong in broken play quite significantly, but I am going to change somewhat my diagnosis of their defence and say if you get near the York goal line, you are probably going to score because their techniques are a bit... Sorry, they're going too high a lot of the time. Because they were late entries into the Super League, they're probably not physically quite there all the time yet. And when people come full steam onto the ball there, particularly in the first few months of the season, I think they're going to find it tough. So if I was coaching against York this week, I'd be saying loads of field position, loads of completion, just get down the other end and let's throw some shapes at them and run hard north-south, and I think you'll come up with some chocolates, basically. Bradford Bulls. This is almost the Bradford Bulls show today. 28. We're trying to get these Bradford fans back on side. Catalans 10. The Bulls were 24-0 up at half-time. I don't think Catalans got off the plane.
Yeah, they got absolutely flogged. I mean, it was the first half demolition. Bradford, as you'd expect, were really up for it. A lot of emotion, a lot of energy. And Catalans were just nowhere to be seen. They just coughed up error after. It was actually quite similar to the Broncos. They kept coughing up ball on their own line with bad errors, cheap mistakes, and Bradford punished them as you would. So, full credit to Bradford. Joel Tompkins was pretty scathing about his side after it, and with good reason. His
face is funny when they lose. He looks like he's ready to kill his players. In the long grass, they sent Catalans to the long grass. Even the Catalans' 2 tries, they were gifts from Bradford. So I don't know if you remember, but Ryan, the left wing, just passed the ball straight to the floor in his own end. And the second try, Akins fumbled a dod's kick and gave them another gift. So they didn't even earn those tries, Catalans. That's how bad they were that day. So no wonder Tompkins, the coach, had a face like that. My new team, 2 wins to lose, 24. Castleford Tigers, 12. Wasn't a bad game, this. It was in the balance for 60, 70 minutes. Great defensive attitude from Toulouse. Last week I mentioned about how they have snoozes in midfield. I didn't notice that this week. And they made a big emphasis, or put a big emphasis on collision. So because the ruck speed is, in theory, being increased in Super League, and this happened a bit in the NRL last year, some coaches are putting more emphasis on the way they actually tackle the player. So rather than go into control and dance or catch, some of them are actually trying to hit now with shoulders under the ball or on the ball or on the nose, wherever they want to hit, right? So, I shouldn't say that. 2 wins. The 2 wins, Olympique. They were doing some of those tackles in the game quite a lot. Castleford's middle getting broken open quite easily. I mean, it got broken within 3 minutes of each half starting, and that's never a good sign. So I think that and their left edge in defence, which was profligate again. Is that the word when they leak a lot? Is that the right word? You're the journo.
We'll go with that.
All right, I'll Google it while you're talking. That would be an issue for the coach, I think. So huge for Castleford this week. They've got Huddersfield, but what did you make of that game, John?
Yeah, I just think massive credit to Toulouse. They're 2 from 2, promoted team. I think they deserved their victory. Ollie Ashall again was terrific. Great reads in defence, and just every time he ran the ball, he seemed to be getting past defenders, slipping out of tackles. I'm really happy for them. I think they're a really good club. A lot of good people there, and it's a fantastic start. Look, I think disappointing for Cass because the game was in the balance, and they just kind of, I don't know, they didn't surrender, but they just didn't throw enough at Toulouse. They didn't really stay in the grind, and disappointing loss. But I think it's fantastic for Toulouse to have such a great start because a lot of people would have picked them for bottom this year.
Profligate is recklessly extravagant or wasteful in the use of resources. So I'd apply that. Yeah, that was all right. That word. Wigan 34, Hull FC 6. Talking about not turning up and being profligate. Hull FC didn't muscle up at all. Wigan came out charging, and another game that was 24-0 at halftime. These were coming from Hull, not from the south of France. Really poor from Hull.
I think there was 2 parts. I think Hull were really poor, but I think Wigan were electric, and I think they've been the form team the first 2 rounds. They obviously have not. Well, they've not played the top teams yet, but they've put on big scores. Their attacks looked really good. Their defence was really, really good on Saturday night. But just the way they're moving the ball, like Bevan French, is looking a real fit. Eckersley on the wing, have a great start of the season. Joe Field is looking very dangerous. I think there's a lot to like about Wigan. They really look motivated. They really look connected.
Wigan's right side really carved up Hull's left. Really carved them up. And I think they were playing with with that much go forward. The Wigan hooker was just rolling out, and they were just doing what they wanted in attack.
They were completely dominant, I think, in every area of the game. And then, Hull lost it a bit. Liam Knight, brain explosion from him, and rightly yellow carded. And really sad, though, what's happened to Will Price. I don't think we've found out what the injury is, but he looked really badly hurt, and he's had a lot of injury issues the last season or 2, so hopefully nothing too serious for him. But John Cartwright, I think you'd be looking at saying, well, what the hell happened? Because that was just a terrible performance.
Your internet is saying John's network bandwidth is low, so I don't know if you're downloading any videos to watch after you've finished the recording. I also want to pay tribute and mention Matt Peat, the Wigan coach. He's got a lot of praise for this already, but I want to add he took the time. He actually interrupted the interview closing at the end to praise Hull KR for what they did. But also, there's something I've not mentioned since, the amount of time he spent doing selfies with the fans after, and autographs and things like that. People tend not to get autographs as regularly now. They want more selfies, and he was just so patient with them, and I thought it was great to see, and the England team could have learned a bit more from that. Huddersfield 16, Wakey 18. I think this says more a little bit about Wakefield, and again, maybe that theory, they're just starting the season a little bit slower to time their run, because there's a lot of confident people in Wakefield after last year's efforts. I had to laugh Huddersfield used a robot to bring out the ball before the game in a Huddersfield kit. I wonder if he's been in their offensive attack. Has he been in their attack or defensive line too? I've not seen anything in this game, mate, so I'm relying on you.
Yeah, I was at the game. It was 8-4 to Wakefield at half-time. It was quite a dour, grinding, tight affair. There wasn't a lot of open play. There wasn't a lot of attacking play.
But robotic.
You could maybe use that analogy. But I'd say that Wakefield, they went, I'm trying to think, I think it was 18-4 ahead with about 20 minutes to go. And the game looked over. And then Huddersfield came back with 2 tries in 2 minutes. Pressure was on, and it was all Huddersfield at the end, and Wakey just held on at the end to win. So it was a strange game, and Darryl Powell said after his team looked nervous. You know, they looked nervous in round 1, and they appeared nervous in round 2 as well. So maybe that expectation of this year and how well they did last year has got to the team a little bit. But I think for the majority, they were the better team. They defended well, apart from a bit of patches. And Huddersfield are missing a lot of players, a lot of key players. Basically, their senior players, you know, the likes of Adam Swift and Adam Clune, and their fullback Niall Evans and Joe Greenwood. But yeah, Huddersfield left it too late to really come around this one. Going to be a hard season for Huddersfield. I think that this CAS game is just looming now. Both teams really need a victory, which isn't going to happen. But, Wakefield will be relieved because they needed to get off the mark, and they have done that, even if it wasn't the most convincing of performances.
Lee's laugh also doubles as media watch this week, and it's a story that I think you tweeted as well, about the rugby union player that ended up in hospital after falling in dog poo. Rugby player ends up in hospital after falling in dog poo was the headline, BBC on the 21st of Feb. Adam Lang, 28, who plays for Tondu RFC in Bridgend, said he did not realise a cut had become infected until he felt an unbearable pain in his arm following the game. He said it was a problem players shouldn't have to deal with, and that the incident would always be on his mind after the infection spread, and he had to spend more than 24 hours in hospital. Well, firstly, Adam, sending our love and support to you. But it's funny that it's dog turd. So it made me think about such incidences in rugby league. And in 1804, when I was playing, we played against Hull Dockers when I was at Eccles, which is now Salford Roosters. And before the game, they made us stand in a line, both teams. So, you're about to prepare to knock heads in the opposition. And they made us walk in army form, sweeping format along the field to scoop up duck turd, because there was a watery thing nearby where ducks existed. And there were copious amounts of ducks that had decided to do an ablution on that field. And it was a regular thing before every game. Have you any such stories, John, from your rugby league history?
Not dog poo stories, but I know, well, at least when I lived in Barnsley, the amount of dog feces that were on walkways and whatever, it's clear that people don't want to pick it up. It's pretty... Right. And then, to be honest, when you look at the amount of rubbish that just is on parks and walkways at least in Yorkshire, there's not a big attitude towards not littering.
Another rugby league story I have, when I played for British students against France in 1942, we played at some ground as a warm-up game. They gave us the wrong directions, and this was the days well before GPS, so a 5-minute journey took us 45 minutes. And of course, what do you think many players want to do before a game? In the hour before the game, they want to empty the bowels. I necessarily wasn't one of those, but I heard plenty of complaints as the boys went into what was the lavatories, and it was literally just a hole in the ground. And therefore, squatting quite significantly prior to a game is probably not the warm-up you need to have, particularly if it's not quick. So that's Lee's laugh this week. Brief preview of next round. Wigan play Lee Thursday. We've touched on that. I think that's a big game. Wigan are on fire. Lee probably need to win this week after a win-loss pattern.
Yeah, and also you're forgetting the last game that they met was in the semi-finals before the grand final with the whole Derek Gate, WhatsApp Gate.
Don't forget, John, I just didn't choose to mention it yet because I knew you'd be all over it.
No, I just think it's interesting with the rivalry between those two clubs. So, should be a great game. They've had some real ding-dong bottles, those two clubs. And obviously they're so close. What is it, 5 miles, 10 miles or something? Lee's
what do fans say about Thursday night games? Like fans that go to games in England?
They don't like it. They particularly don't like. I mean, I guess Wigan Lee is a perfect Thursday night game because if you live in either of those towns, it's very close by. But say Wigan were playing Hull on a Thursday night, it's a nightmare because it might take you 2.5 hours. You might not get home till 2 a.m.
But you know the other problem, John? People who love rugby league in Wigan and Lee, a lot of them are involved in the game at amateur level. And they're either a player, a coach, or an administrator in the amateur game. And guess what nights amateur teams tend to train? Tuesday and Thursday nights.
Look, you never can get a perfect time. Everyone's always complaining at times, but you need content and you need to spread your fixtures across. So Thursday night games are great for the TV viewer. That's my take on it. So I'll be at home in this lovely February weather and enjoying it on TV.
That's right, yeah. Friday, Castleford versus Huddersfield. We mentioned that. I think it's probably the pick of the games this week, if I'm honest. Or certainly that and the Lee-Wigan game. And then Hull play York. I think Hull will fancy their chances in that one, and therefore they'll have a win-loss-win start to the season. Your thoughts?
Yeah, an interesting one. Obviously, Hull with a couple of injuries, and they'll want a good performance after being so bad against Wigan.
On Saturday, we have Rugby League in Las Vegas, the Catalan region, and the most glamorous of all, Warrington. Warrington host Wakefield. Yeah, I mean, that's another good game.
It is a good game. I mean, Warrington have had the week off because obviously Hull are being the World Cup champions, so they should be fit and ready to go. Nicely rested. I thought they were good in round one, Warrington, so I'd be tipping them as slight favourites in that one. Catalans, St Helens is an interesting game as well because Catalans were 4, but St Helens are missing troops. And
a cold game of the round too early. They're all good.
Yeah. Well, I think Hull and Leeds in Vegas is a great game. And just really annoying that the kickoff time in the UK is, I think, midnight or 12:30 at night. Compared to last year where the Wigan-Warrington game kicked off, I think, at around 9:30 p.m. and it got huge TV ratings. This one, I think, will struggle because a lot of people will be asleep.
And on Sunday, Bradford host 2 wins Olympique.
Yeah, quite a fascinating one because Toulouse have had a fantastic start. Bradford have had a pretty good start. Obviously, 1 win, 1 loss, but they were very, very good in round one. And Toulouse have been playing at Bradford for, every season for about the last 10, except for the year they were in Super League before, so they know how to play at Odsall. They've got a lot of history with that. So, quite a fascinating one, that one. Hard to pick, I would say.
Well, that'll do us for this week, John. Keep an eye on Rugby League Coach social media for analysis video about the other teams that I didn't cover last week in Super League. So, therefore, Huddersfield's defence, Catalan's defence, St Helens, Lee and Leeds defence. Rugby League Coach on all the social media platforms, apart from X, I'll call it X, at RL Coach on the net. If you want to talk or abuse Johnny...
Don't. Maybe think again. Now you can get me on X at Johnny D. Davidson, or you can get me on Facebook at John Davidson Journalist, or you can get me on Patreon and sign up to Rugby League.
Your contacts are different every week. Soon you'll be giving your address out. Take care, John.
On that note,
hang on. We our instant reaction. So after the hooter this week, we're going to do Thursday night's game. So Friday morning in Australia, Thursday night. Which Thursday night is Wigan and Lee. World War III. See you later.